Without this surgery, Mrs. Harper, you have 4 months. Maybe 5 if you're lucky. Those words didn't just change my life, they ended it. Because sometimes death doesn't start with your body failing. It starts when the people you love decide you're not worth saving. Or at least, they ended the life I thought I knew, the one where my daughter loved me, where family meant something more than transactions and conveniences. I was 73 years old when I learned that the child I'd raised, the brilliant woman I'd sacrificed everything for, valued my life at exactly $0. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to that Tuesday afternoon in Dr. Richardson's office, when the walls seemed to close in and the air became too thick to breathe. The tumor on my spine was aggressive, rare, the kind that doesn't ask permission before it steals everything from you. Dr. Richardson, a woman I'd known for 15 years, couldn't quite meet my eyes as she explained how it had wrapped itself around my vertebrae like poison ivy choking a tree. "There's a surgical team at Johns Hopkins," she said, sliding a folder across her desk toward me. "They specialize in exactly this type of case. The success rate is 78%. Without it..." She didn't need to finish that sentence. I opened the folder with shaking hands. The number at the bottom of the estimate made my vision blur. $112,000. My insurance would cover $43,000. The rest was mine to find. I'd raised my daughter Rachel alone after my husband Thomas died in a construction accident when she was just 9 years old. I worked as a bank manager during the day and cleaned office buildings at night to keep food on the table and pay for her private school education. When she got into Yale for her MBA, I took out loans I'd only just finished paying off 2 years ago. Now, at 73, with arthritis in my hands and a tumor trying to kill me, I needed her. Not for everything, just for $69,000. Just for my life. Rachel's architectural firm occupied an entire floor of a glass tower downtown, all sleek lines and modern art that probably cost more than my annual pension. Her assistant, a young man with perfect hair and an expensive watch, looked surprised when I arrived without an appointment. "Mrs. Harper," he said, standing quickly. "Is everything all right? I need to see Rachel. It's urgent." When I walked into her office, my daughter looked up from her drafting table, and I saw her face shift from surprise to concern. She was 42, successful beyond anything I dared dream for her, wearing a designer suit that could have fed a family for a month. "Mom, what's wrong? How do you even start that kind of conversation? How do you tell your child you're dying?" I placed the medical folder on her pristine white desk. "I have cancer, sweetheart, a tumor on my spine. Without surgery, I have 4 months to live." The color drained from her face as she scanned the documents. For a moment, just a moment, I saw my little girl again, the one who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, who cried when I had to work late, who promised she'd take care of me when she grew up. "Oh, Mom," she whispered, coming around the desk to embrace me. "I'm so sorry." I held on to her, feeling the tears I'd been holding back finally break free. "The surgery costs more than insurance will cover. I need $69,000, Rachel. I hate to ask, but..." She pulled back and something flickered across her face, something cold. "That's a lot of money, Mom." And just like that, I realized love has limits. And mine was about $69,000. I know it is. But Rachel, it's my life. She walked to the window, her back to me, and I watched her shoulders tense. "Let me talk to Marcus about it. We'll need to look at our finances." Marcus? Her husband of 7 years, a hedge fund manager who drove a Porsche and wore watches that cost more than my first car. The man who'd never liked me much, who thought I was too foligue. "Rachel," I said quietly, "I wouldn't ask if I had any other choice." "I understand, Mom. Just give me a few days, okay?" I left her office feeling something I'd never felt around my daughter before. Unwelcome. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to stay with me. Subscribe if you haven't already, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. It warms this old heart to know where my words travel. 5 days passed before Rachel called. Not visited, called. Her voice had that practiced professional tone she used with difficult clients. "Mom, Marcus and I have been talking about your situation. My situation. Not your cancer or your health crisis. My situation." "My situation?" Funny how fast family turns your life into a spreadsheet. We want to help, we really do, but $69,000 is everything we have in our emergency fund. What if something happens to us? What if the firm loses a major client? We have responsibilities, a mortgage, 2 car payments. Rachel, I interrupted, my voice steady despite the knife twisting in my chest. I raised you alone after your father died. I worked 2 jobs to send you to private school. I took out loans for Yale that I only finished paying off last year. I'm not asking you to give up your life. I'm asking you to help me keep mine. The silence stretched like a wound opening wider. That was your choice, Mom, she finally said, and I heard Marcus's influence in every word. You chose to have a child. You chose to support me. I didn't ask for any of that. It's not fair to hold it over my head now. That sentence, it killed more than cancer ever could. The phone nearly slipped from my fingers. The stranger's voice couldn't be coming from my daughter, the girl I'd rocked through nightmares after her father died, the teenager I'd cheered at every debate competition, the woman whose Yale graduation had been the proudest day of my life. I see, I said softly. I understand now. There are programs, Mom, payment plans, medical loans. You don't need to burden us with this. Burden. That's what I'd become. After 33 years of single motherhood, of sacrifice and exhaustion, and choosing her future over my own comfort every single day, I was a burden. I hung up without saying goodbye. What Rachel didn't know, what she couldn't have known because she'd never bothered to ask, was that I'd already spent the past week researching every option. Every charity, every assistance program, every medical loan with interest rates that would have destroyed me even if I lived. The waiting lists were 6 months long. The requirements were impossible. The doors were all closed. And then I saw Rachel's Instagram post. The invitation was elegant, printed on cream cardstock and photographed artfully against a backdrop of white orchids. Join us in celebrating Marcus Chen's 45th birthday at an evening of elegance. The Metropolitan Club, black tie required. Contribution, $400 per couple. I scrolled through the comments, watching friends and business associates confirm their attendance. I counted them. 63 couples so far. That was over $50,000 just in ticket sales. But that was only the beginning. Rachel's Instagram stories showed every detail of the party planning. The custom ice sculpture of a sailboat, Marcus's hobby, had cost $18,000. The 7-course tasting menu from a Michelin-starred chef, $42,000. The jazz quartet she'd flown in from New York, $30,000. The designer tuxedo Marcus had commissioned, $12,000. I sat in my small living room, my cancer-ridden spine aching, and added up the numbers. The total made me physically sick. $267,000. For one night. For one man's birthday party. Rachel, who couldn't find $69,000 to save her mother's life, was spending nearly 4 times that amount on her husband's party. I called her that evening, my hands steady with a rage so cold it felt like clarity. Rachel, I saw the post about Marcus's birthday. It looks lovely, a pause. Oh, yes, it's going to be special. Marcus only turns 45 once. How much is it costing, sweetheart? Another pause, longer this time. Mom, that's really not your concern. Humor me. I'm curious. It's an investment in our network. The people coming to this party represent potential clients, business relationships. It's not just a birthday, it's strategic. How much, Rachel? The silence stretched until I thought she'd hung up. Then, around $250,000. Give or take, $250,000 for a party. But not $69,000 to save her mother's life. I see, I said quietly. Thank you for clarifying your priorities. I didn't wait for her response before ending the call. I wasn't jealous. I was just awake. That night, I made the decision that would change everything. The next morning, I walked into my bank, the same bank where I'd worked for 28 years before retiring, and applied for a home equity loan. My house, the one Thomas and I had bought in 1976, the one where I'd raised Rachel, the one filled with 47 years of memories, was worth $320,000. I still owed $48,000 on the mortgage. Mrs. Patterson, the loan officer who'd been my trainee 20 years ago, looked troubled. Margaret, are you sure? At your age, maybe a different option. I need it now. All of it. She processed the paperwork with professional efficiency, but I caught her looking at me with concern. When I walked out with a certified check for $123,000, my hands weren't shaking anymore. I felt nothing but cold, clear determination. Johns Hopkins scheduled my surgery for 3 weeks later. Dr. Richardson hugged me when I told her, "You're fighting back, Margaret. That's what matters." Fighting back with everything I owned, everything I'd built, everything that was supposed to be my security in old age. But I'd be alive. That was more than Rachel had been willing to ensure. The weekend of Marcus's party, social media exploded with photographs. I scrolled through them from my hospital bed the night before my surgery, taking notes like an accountant preparing for an audit. Rachel glowed in a couture gown that probably cost more than my monthly pension. Marcus looked distinguished in his custom tuxedo. The ice sculpture was indeed impressive. The food looked exquisite. In one photo, Rachel was giving a toast, champagne glass raised high, her face radiant. The caption read, "My wife's speech about how every sacrifice is worth it when you love someone this much brought tears to everyone's eyes." Every sacrifice is worth it when you love someone this much. I screenshot that photo and saved it to a folder on my phone titled Evidence. The surgery took 11 hours. When I woke up in recovery, groggy and in pain, the nurse told me everything had gone perfectly. The tumor was removed completely. Dr. Richardson said I'd need extensive physical therapy, but I should make a full recovery. Rachel never called, never visited, never sent flowers or a card or even a text message. But surviving has a strange side effect. It gives you time to plan. The physical therapy was brutal. 6 months of learning to walk again, of pushing through pain that made me weep, of rebuilding strength in a body that felt like it had betrayed me. But every day I survived was a day Rachel hadn't counted on. Every small victory, standing without assistance, walking to the mailbox, climbing stairs, was a reminder that I'd saved myself. No thanks to my daughter. During my recovery, I made plans. If I was going to survive this cancer, and the doctors assured me I would, then I had decisions to make about my future, starting with whether I wanted Rachel in it at all. 18 months after my surgery, Dr. Richardson declared me officially in remission. I sat in her office, healthy and cancer-free, thinking about the daughter who'd never once asked how I was doing. "You beat this, Margaret," Dr. Richardson said, genuine warmth in her voice. "How do you feel?" Grateful, furious, relieved, devastated. But mostly, I felt free. "I feel like I have a second chance," I told her, "and I intend to use it wisely." The first thing I did was sell my house. Between the equity loan and my age, there wasn't much left in it for me. But the sale gave me enough to start over somewhere new, somewhere Rachel wouldn't think to look. I chose Sedona, Arizona. The dry climate was good for my recovering spine, and it was 2,000 miles from the daughter who'd abandoned me. I rented a small casita in a retirement community, nothing fancy, but it was mine and it was paid for in cash. The second thing I did was disappear. I changed my phone number, deleted all social media accounts, left no forwarding address. When Rachel eventually called my old number, if she ever did, she'd find it disconnected. When she drove by my old house, she'd see strangers living there. For the first time in my adult life, I was invisible to the people who were supposed to love me. It was terrifying. It was liberating. I spent my first months in Sedona sleeping late, hiking the red rock trails, reading books I'd never had time for. Slowly, I made friends with other residents in my community. Patricia, whose son had drained her retirement account. George, whose daughters fought over his estate before he was even dead. Maria, whose children had moved away and rarely called. We were a community of the forgotten, and we were building something beautiful together. Patricia mentioned one day that she needed help organizing her finances for estate planning. "I don't trust lawyers anymore," she said over coffee. "They all sound like my son." I'd always been good with numbers. It was why I'd risen to bank manager. What started as helping Patricia evolved into helping others in the community. Word spread. Soon I was managing investment portfolios, helping with tax planning, advising on financial decisions. It turned out that when you're no longer worried about impressing anyone or maintaining family relationships, you can take smart risks. Very smart risks. 2 years after disappearing, I'd built a small financial consulting practice that earned me more than I'd ever made at the bank. My investment portfolio had grown substantially thanks to careful planning and a willingness to trust my own judgment. 3 years in, I bought a house. Nothing extravagant, but it had a view of the Red Rocks and a garden where I could grow tomatoes. 4 years in, I was worth more than I'd ever dreamed possible. 5 years after leaving my old life behind, my consulting firm had expanded beyond the retirement community. I had clients across Arizona, a waiting list, and a reputation for helping people protect their assets from predatory family members. My little practice became Harper Financial Consulting, with an office downtown and 2 employees. We specialized in elder financial protection, estate planning, and investment management for seniors starting over. The Arizona Business Journal ran a feature about me, The Comeback Queen, How One Woman Built a Financial Empire After 70. The article included a photo of me standing in front of my office, healthy and confident, my white hair styled professionally, wearing a suit that Rachel would have approved of. That article was how she found me. I was reviewing quarterly reports when my assistant, Jennifer, buzzed my office. "Mrs. Harper, there's a woman here who claims to be your daughter. She doesn't have an appointment, but she's quite insistent." After 5 years of silence, Rachel had tracked me down. "Does she look desperate?" I asked, surprised by how calm I felt. Jennifer paused. "Yes, ma'am. She looks like she's been crying." "Good. Send her in." I straightened my shoulders and prepared to meet the stranger who used to be my daughter. Rachel walked into my office and I barely recognized her. The confident architect in designer clothes had been replaced by a woman who looked 10 years older than she should. Her hair needed styling. Her clothes, while still expensive, hung oddly on a frame that had lost weight. There were dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. "Hello, Rachel." I didn't stand. Didn't offer her a seat. I simply waited. She stood frozen in the doorway, staring at me like I was a ghost. "Mom, my God, I thought—" "We all thought you were dead." "How dramatic." "I'm very much alive, as you can see." Her eyes swept my office, the mahogany furniture, the framed certifications on the walls, the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Sedona's Red Rocks. This is incredible. You look amazing, healthy." "Cancer-free for 4.5 years, I said matter-of-factly. "The surgery worked beautifully." "Of course you wouldn't know that since you never called to check." Her face crumpled, and for a moment she looked like the 9-year-old who'd cried at her father's funeral. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I was wrong. I was selfish. I let Marcus influence me when I should have—" "You were exactly who you are," I interrupted. "Nothing more, nothing less. The question is, what do you want now?" Rachel collapsed into the chair across from my desk without invitation. "I need your help," she whispered. And there it was. Not remorse, not love, not a desire to reconcile. She needed something. "Help with what, Rachel?" "Everything's falling apart. The firm is bankrupt. Marcus left me. The house is in foreclosure. Everything we built is gone." I listened to Rachel's story with the same expression I'd use reviewing a particularly boring financial statement. Marcus had been embezzling from his hedge fund for years. When the fraud was discovered, he'd fled the country, leaving Rachel to face the legal and financial consequences. Her architectural firm had been leveraged against his investments. When he fell, she fell with him. "How much do you owe?" I asked. "Between legal fees, penalties, and debts?" "Almost $3 million. $3 million. I did quick mental math. If they'd had the money for that extravagant party 5 years ago, Marcus's fraud must have been even larger than reported. "Where is he now?" "Malaysia. No extradition treaty." Her voice was bitter. "He cleaned out every account, transferred everything offshore. He was planning this for years, apparently. There were other women, other victims. And you came to me because I'm facing criminal charges as an accomplice. The prosecutors think I knew about the fraud. My lawyers say I need $200,000 just to mount a defense. Mom, I have nothing. Less than nothing. $200,000. Less than what she'd spent on Marcus's birthday party. And you thought of me?" I mused. "After 5 years of silence, after leaving me for dead. I made a mistake. You made a choice," I corrected. "You chose Marcus over your mother. You chose a party over my life. People make choices, Rachel. They live with consequences. I lost everything, Mom." Tears streamed down her face. "My marriage, my career, my reputation, my money, everything." "Not everything," I said quietly. "You still have your life. I almost didn't have that luxury, remember?" Rachel looked up sharply, finally understanding. The surgery worked. You survived. You'd think that was the end of my story, but it was just the beginning. I survived because I saved myself. I took out a loan against my house, paid for my own treatment, beat cancer alone, and built this. I gestured around my office. Without any help from my loving daughter, I could have lost you forever. You did lose me, I replied. 5 years ago, when you chose $69,000 over your mother's life. The woman sitting here now is someone else entirely. Rachel spent the next hour begging, pleading, promising to change, to be better, to make amends. I listened with detached interest, like watching a moderately interesting television show. When she finally exhausted herself, I picked up my phone. Jennifer, please bring in the Chen file. Rachel looked confused. Chen? Marcus Chen? Your husband, ex-husband, made a critical error. He ran his scheme from Arizona, my state, my city, where I have spent 5 years building relationships with prosecutors, judges, and law enforcement. Did you think I built this firm without knowing who was operating in my backyard? Jennifer entered with a thick folder. I opened it slowly, deliberately. Marcus made it to Malaysia, yes. But his assets didn't. The prosecutors froze everything last year. They've been building a case, and they needed testimony from his victims. I pulled out a document, including his wife. I didn't know. I know you didn't. The forensic accountant I connected them with proved it. You were a victim, Rachel, not an accomplice. The charges against you can be dropped with the right legal representation. Hope flickered in her eyes. How do you know all this? Because I made it my business to know. Because the prosecutor is my client. Because I've spent 5 years building influence and connections and power that nobody can take away from me. Mom! I can make your legal problems disappear, I continued. I know the lawyers you need. I have the documentation that proves your innocence. I can give you a fresh start. What do you want in return? I looked at my daughter, this broken, desperate woman who'd once been so sure of her priorities, and felt something unexpected. Not satisfaction, not revenge, just profound sadness. I want you to understand something, Rachel. When you refused to help me, you thought you were protecting your future, your security, your comfortable life. How did that work out? She flinched. I'm going to help you, I said quietly. Not because you deserve it, not because family owes each other, but because I learned something when I was fighting cancer alone. I learned that I'm stronger than I ever knew, and I learned that I don't want to become the kind of person who abandons family when they're desperate. I don't deserve this. No, you don't. But that's not why I'm doing it. I spent the next hour outlining a plan. The lawyers she needed, the documentation she could access, the steps to clear her name. Rachel listened with tears streaming down her face, unable to speak. When we finished, I handed her a check for $50,000 for your legal fees and living expenses while this gets resolved. Not a loan, a gift. Mom, I can't. Yes, you can. Because unlike you, I can afford to help. Because unlike Marcus, I keep my promises. And because despite everything, you're still my daughter. That didn't mean our relationship was repaired. It meant I was choosing not to become what hurt me. There's a difference. 7 months later, all charges against Rachel were dropped. Marcus was arrested trying to re-enter the United States and faced 40 years in prison. Rachel's firm was restructured, and she started over with a small practice focused on sustainable housing for low-income families. She calls me every week now, not asking for money, just talking. The conversations are still careful, still marked by years of hurt, but they're real in a way they never were before. Last month, she flew to Sedona with an envelope. Inside was a cashier's check for $69,000. It's what I should have given you 5 years ago, she said. Plus interest calculated at the rate you paid on your home equity loan. It's not enough to make up for what I did. It'll never be enough. But I needed you to have it. I looked at the check, then set it aside. Rachel, I don't need your money anymore. I know. But I needed to give it to you. Not because you need it, but because I need to prove to myself that I'm not that person anymore. That I'm capable of doing the right thing, even if it's 5 years too late. We talked for hours that day. Really talked, maybe for the first time since she was a child. She told me about therapy, about the hard work of rebuilding her sense of self-worth. I told her about my business, my friends, the life I'd built from ashes. I'm proud of you, she said as she prepared to leave. I know I don't have the right to say that, but I'm proud of the woman you've become. I'm proud of the woman you're becoming, I replied. Not who you were, but who you're choosing to be now. As I watched her rental car disappear down the road, I thought about the strange journey that brought us here. 5 years ago, I faced death alone because my daughter chose money over my life. She lost everything and discovered what truly mattered. I saved myself, built a fortune, proved I didn't need anyone's rescue. But the most valuable thing I gained wasn't money or success or independence. It was the knowledge that I'm strong enough to forgive without forgetting, to help without enabling, to love without surrendering my self-worth. Some lessons cost everything to learn. Rachel learned hers. In teaching it to her, I learned mine. The hardest lesson is that family isn't about blood or obligation. It's about choosing to stand by each other, even when, especially when, it costs everything you have. I'm 78 now, cancer-free, successful beyond my wildest dreams, and I have a relationship with my daughter that's built on truth instead of illusions. That's worth more than any amount of money could buy. Thanks for listening to this old woman's story. I hope it reminds you that it's never too late to start over, to stand up for yourself, or to choose who you want to be. Your voice matters. Your life matters. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise.